hidden in your kitchen right now, might be one of nature's most powerful inflammation fighters. Scientists discovered these tiny black seeds contain omega-3 compounds so potent they trigger measurable changes in inflammatory markers within hours. Yet 99% of people consume them completely wrong, destroying nearly every anti-inflammatory benefit. When prepared correctly with one specific addition at the optimal time, these activate your body's natural healing mechanisms in ways that shocked researchers. The supplement industry built a $50 billion empire on isolated omega-3 capsules while suppressing what food scientists have known since 2015. Chia seeds deliver alpha-linolenic acid in its most bioavailable form, but your body faces a critical conversion bottleneck that renders them almost useless for inflammation. Add one kitchen spice with a specific activation compound, and suddenly you're triggering dual inflammatory pathways that pharmaceutical companies spent decades trying to and replicate synthetically. Why don't you hear about this combination? Because it costs about 50 cents per day and works better than medications priced at $4 per pill. Here's what makes this different. Most anti-inflammatory approaches target one pathway. NSAIDs block COX enzymes. Steroids suppress immune response. But inflammation operates through multiple interconnected systems: prostaglandin production, cytokine signaling, NF-kappa B activation. When you combine chia seeds with turmeric and black pepper in the right ratios, you're simultaneously addressing enzymatic inflammation and cellular membrane stability. Researchers at the University of California tracked 180 adults over 8 weeks using this exact combination. C-reactive protein dropped an average of 31%, interleukin-6 decreased 38%, and joint pain scores improved by 52% without a single prescription medication. Let me tell you about Robert, a 5'8" construction worker from Ohio who could barely grip a hammer by 3 p.m. His knees ached climbing into his truck. He'd spent $1,200 on cortisone injections that year, each providing maybe 3 weeks of relief before the inflammation returned. His doctor suggested early retirement. Then, Robert's daughter, a nutritionist, mixed him what she called inflammation paste, 2 tablespoons of chia seeds soaked overnight with 1 teaspoon of turmeric and a quarter teaspoon of black pepper, mixed into his morning yogurt. Within 10 days, he noticed his knee stiffness easing. By week 4, he was working full shifts without afternoon ibuprofen. At his 6-month checkup, his inflammatory markers had dropped so dramatically, his doctor asked what prescription he'd started. Robert wasn't taking anything prescription. He was just eating seeds and spices his grandmother probably had in her pantry. Now, before you start dumping chia seeds into smoothies, thinking you've solved inflammation, understand the biological problem that derails most people. Chia seeds contain about 5 grams of alpha-linolenic acid per ounce. That's an omega-3 fatty acid your body needs for cellular membrane health and inflammation control. Sounds perfect, right? But here's where biochemistry gets frustrating. Your body can't use ALA directly for inflammation suppression. It must convert ALA into 2 other omega-3 forms, EPA and DHA, through a series of enzymatic reactions. And this conversion process is pathetically inefficient. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry in 2018 measured ALA conversion rates in healthy adults. On average, only 5 to 10% of consumed ALA successfully converts to EPA. Even worse, less than 0.5% converts to DHA. That means, if you eat 2 tablespoons of chia seeds containing 5 grams of ALA, your body produces maybe 250 to 500 milligrams of EPA and perhaps 25 milligrams of DHA. To put that in perspective, studies showing significant inflammation reduction typically use 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of EPA daily. You'd need to consume nearly a full cup of chia seeds daily to reach therapeutic levels through conversion alone, and that much fiber would leave you glued to the bathroom. This conversion bottleneck explains why chia seeds alone produce modest anti-inflammatory effects. Your inflammatory markers might improve slightly, but chronic inflammation, the kind driving arthritis, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune conditions, requires more aggressive intervention. When researchers at Tufts University gave participants 25 grams of chia seeds daily for 12 weeks, they measured a modest 15% reduction in C-reactive protein. That's better than nothing. But people with significant inflammation need their CRP levels to drop by 40–60% to experience meaningful symptom relief. The problem isn't the chia seeds. The problem is we're asking them to work alone when inflammation operates through multiple biochemical pathways simultaneously. Alpha-linolenic acid addresses membrane-level inflammation once it converts to EPA and DHA. But what about the enzymatic inflammation? The cyclooxygenase enzymes producing inflammatory prostaglandins, the transcription factors like NF-kappa B that turn on inflammatory gene expression? Chia seeds don't touch those pathways. You need a different compound that inhibits inflammatory enzyme production while the omega-3 seconds handle membrane stabilization. Enter turmeric, specifically its active compound curcumin. This bright yellow spice that stains everything it touches contains molecules that directly inhibit COX-2 enzymes, the same enzymes targeted by prescription anti-inflammatories like Celebrex. A 2019 meta-analysis published in BMC Medicine reviewed 15 randomized controlled trials involving over 1,400 participants with various inflammatory conditions. Curcumin supplementation reduced inflammatory markers by an average of 42%, with some studies showing even greater effects in people with elevated baseline inflammation. The researchers noted curcumin's multi-target approach. It blocks inflammatory enzyme production, suppresses inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines, and inhibits the NF-kappa B pathway that acts like a master switch for inflammation. But here's where it gets interesting. Curcumin has its own absorption problem, just like Chia's ALA has a conversion problem. When you consume turmeric by itself, your digestive system breaks down curcumin so rapidly that very little reaches your bloodstream. Studies show only about 1% of consumed curcumin actually gets absorbed. Most passes through your system, providing zero anti-inflammatory benefit. Scientists call this poor bioavailability, and it's why early curcumin supplements showed disappointing results despite promising lab research. Then researchers discovered something fascinating. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine that dramatically enhances curcumin absorption by blocking the liver enzymes that normally break it down. A landmark study, published in Planta Medica in 1998, found that 20 milligrams of piperine, about the amount in a quarter teaspoon of black pepper, increased curcumin absorption by 0%, not 20%, not 200%, 2,000%. Suddenly, that 1% absorption rate jumped to 20%, meaning 20 times more curcumin reached inflammatory tissues where it could actually work. Now imagine combining all three components. Chia seeds providing omega-3 seconds that slowly incorporate into cell membranes, reducing inflammatory signaling at the cellular level. Turmeric delivering curcumin that blocks inflammatory enzyme production. Black pepper ensuring that curcumin actually gets absorbed instead of passing through unused. You've created a three-pronged attack on inflammation, membrane stabilization, enzyme inhibition, and enhanced bioavailability using ingredients that cost maybe 50 cents per day. Researchers at the University of Arizona wanted to test this exact combination. They recruited 120 adults with elevated inflammatory markers C-reactive protein above 3 milligrams per liter, which indicates significant systemic inflammation. Participants were divided into 4 groups. Group 1 received chia seeds alone. Group 2 got turmeric alone. Group 3 received chia plus turmeric without black pepper. Group 4 got the complete combination, chia, turmeric, and black pepper. After 8 weeks, the results were striking. The chia-only group showed modest improvements. CRP decreased by an average of 12%, and participants reported slight reductions in joint stiffness. The turmeric-only group did slightly better, with CRP dropping 18% on average, though many participants complained about digestive upset from the high doses needed without piperine enhancement. The chia plus turmeric group showed promise, with CRP declining 28% and noticeable symptom improvements. But the complete combination group, that's where things got remarkable. Participants consuming chia seeds with turmeric and black pepper experienced an average CRP reduction of 43% after 8 weeks. Their interleukin-6 levels, another key inflammatory marker, dropped 39%. TNF-alpha, a cytokine strongly associated with chronic inflammation, decreased by 35%. But the numbers only tell part of the story. When researchers interviewed participants, they heard reports of dramatic functional improvements. People who hadn't been able to garden or play with grandchildren were suddenly doing both. Morning stiffness that typically lasted hours now resolved within 30 minutes. Some participants who'd been taking daily NSAIDs for years were able to discontinue them entirely under their doctor's supervision. The mechanism behind these improvements involves fascinating biochemistry. Within about 2 hours of consuming this combination, piperine from the black pepper inhibits enzymes in your liver and intestinal wall that normally metabolize curcumin. This allows curcumin to enter your bloodstream largely intact. By hour 6, curcumin molecules are circulating through your body, encountering inflammatory tissues, and beginning to inhibit COX-2 enzyme production. Simultaneously, the omega-3 seconds from chia seeds are being processed. That inefficient 5 to 10% conversion to EPA is happening. But now you've got curcumin handling the enzymatic inflammation that omega-3 seconds don't address. Over the next 24 hours, curcumin blocks production of inflammatory prostaglandins, while EPA begins incorporating into cell membranes. Your cellular membranes become more flexible, less prone to inflammatory damage. By days 2 through 4, you've established what researchers call steady-state anti-inflammatory activity, continuous enzyme inhibition from curcumin, combined with membrane stabilization from omega-3 seconds. This is when people typically notice their first symptom improvements. That nagging shoulder pain becomes less sharp, knee stiffness easing upstairs. Better sleep because inflammatory cytokines that disrupt sleep are decreasing. By the end of week 1, something else happens. Studies using sensitive lab equipment show measurable changes in gene expression. Curcumin and omega-3 seconds both influence which genes your cells turn on and off. Inflammatory genes, the ones coding for cytokine production, inflammatory enzyme synthesis begin turning down their activity. Anti-inflammatory genes start expressing more actively. Your body is literally reprogramming its inflammatory response at the genetic level. Why don't more doctors talk about this? Several reasons, and they're worth understanding. First, medical education focuses heavily on pharmaceutical interventions. Doctors learn about COX-2 inhibitors, corticosteroids, DMARDs for autoimmune conditions. They get maybe 1 or 2 lectures on nutritional interventions during 4 years of medical school. Second, there's no profit motive. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent chia seeds or turmeric. They can't charge $4 per pill for something you buy in bulk for pennies. The entire research and marketing apparatus that drives medical practice simply doesn't apply to food-based approaches. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the medical system is built around measurable interventions. When a doctor prescribes 20 milligrams of atorvastatin, they know exactly what dose the patient receives. With food-based approaches, there's variability. Different turmeric brands contain different curcumin concentrations. Storage conditions affect potency. Doctors feel more confident prescribing standardized medications than suggesting people mix spices in their kitchen. But here's what that conservative approach misses. A 2021 analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition compared cost-effectiveness of various anti-inflammatory interventions. NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, cost about $20 monthly, but come with gastrointestinal bleeding risks and cardiovascular concerns with long-term use. COX-2 inhibitors like celecoxib run $120 monthly with similar cardiovascular risks. The chia turmeric black pepper combination, about $15 monthly with virtually no side effects in healthy individuals. When researchers calculated cost per unit of inflammatory marker reduction, food-based approaches were 8 to 12 times more cost-effective than pharmaceutical options. Robert, that construction worker I mentioned earlier, did the math. He'd spent about $3,600 over 3 years on various anti-inflammatory medications and injections. In the 18 months since switching to the chia turmeric combination, he'd spent maybe $270 total. He was saving over $2,000 annually while experiencing better inflammation control than he'd ever achieved with prescriptions. His doctor, initially skeptical, became so impressed with Robert's lab results that he started suggesting the combination to other patients with inflammatory conditions. The bioavailability difference between this combination and isolated supplements deserves emphasis. When supplement companies extract curcumin and put it in capsules, they're isolating one compound from a complex matrix. Turmeric root contains over 300 different compounds beyond curcumin turmerones, bis-dimethoxycurcumin, dimethoxycurcumin, many of which have their own anti-inflammatory properties and may work synergistically with curcumin. Similarly, chia seeds provide not just omega-3 seconds but also lignans, antioxidants, and fiber that support overall metabolic health. There's something food scientists call the food matrix effect. Nutrients consumed within their natural food matrix, surrounded by the proteins, fats, fibers, and phytochemicals they evolved with, behave differently than isolated compounds. They're absorbed better, metabolized more effectively, and produce fewer side effects. When you eat 2 tablespoons of whole chia seeds mixed with turmeric powder and cracked black pepper, you're getting dozens of beneficial compounds working together in ways we're still discovering. This matters because inflammation isn't one simple process. It's a complex network of signaling molecules, enzymes, transcription factors, and cellular responses. Single target drugs like NSAIDs block one enzyme or one receptor. They're precise, but inflammation often routes around single blockades. Food-based approaches work differently. They gently nudge multiple pathways simultaneously. Less precise, perhaps, but harder for inflammation to evade. Now, you might wonder about the timeline. Pharmaceuticals work fast, take an ibuprofen, feel relief in 30 minutes. Food-based approaches require more patience. That first week, you might notice subtle changes. Maybe you're reaching for the ibuprofen bottle slightly less often. Perhaps morning stiffness eases 10 minutes earlier than usual. Week 2, the effects become more obvious. Activities that caused pain flare-ups become tolerable. Week 4, you're noticing functional improvements, playing with grandkids, working in the garden, sleeping through the night without pain waking you. By week 8, the timeline used in most research studies, inflammatory markers show measurable improvement. But the benefits continue building. Studies following participants for 6 months show continued improvements in inflammatory markers and symptoms. This isn't a quick fix. It's a sustained anti-inflammatory protocol that works by supporting your body's natural inflammation resolution processes rather than simply blocking inflammatory signals with drugs. The research keeps expanding. A 2020 study published in Nutrients examined this combination specifically in people with rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune condition causing severe joint inflammation. After 12 weeks, participants experienced significant reductions in tender joint count, morning stiffness duration, and disease activity scores. Some were able to reduce their DMARD medications under rheumatology supervision. The researchers noted that the combination didn't just suppress inflammation, it appeared to help rebalance immune function, which is exactly what you want in autoimmune conditions. Here's exactly how to prepare this and why every step matters. You'll need organic chia seeds, ground turmeric powder, freshly cracked black pepper, and a healthy fat source like coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil. The fat is non-negotiable. Both curcumin and the fat-soluble vitamins in chia seeds require dietary fat for absorption. Without it, you're wasting most of the anti-inflammatory potential. Start with 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in a glass jar or bowl. Add 1 cup of filtered water or unsweetened almond milk. Stir thoroughly because chia seeds form a gel coating within seconds, and if you don't mix them, they'll clump together like tiny rubber balls. Let this mixture sit for at least 15 minutes, though overnight in the refrigerator works even better. During this soaking period, the chia seeds absorb liquid and expand to about 12 times their dry size. This pre-soaking does something important. It begins breaking down phytic acid, a compound in seeds that can bind to minerals and reduce their absorption. While your chia seeds are soaking, measure 1 teaspoon of ground turmeric. Fresh turmeric root works too. If you can find it, about 1 inch of peeled, grated root equals roughly 1 teaspoon of powder. Here's a critical detail most people miss. Turmeric quality varies dramatically. Some grocery store turmeric powders contain as little as 2% curcumin by weight. High-quality turmeric should contain 3 to 5% curcumin. Look for bright orange-yellow powder, not dull brownish yellow, which indicates old or low-quality product. If you're buying turmeric for therapeutic purposes rather than just curry flavoring, spending an extra few dollars on quality makes a real difference. Now add 1/4 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper. This amount provides about 20 milligrams of piperine, the magic compound that multiplies curcumin. Absorption 20-fold. Pre-ground pepper works, but freshly cracked releases more piperine. If you've got a pepper grinder, use it. The difference between pre-ground and fresh cracked pepper in terms of piperine content can be 30–40%, and since we're trying to maximize anti-inflammatory effects, those details matter. Here's where the fat comes in. Add 1 tablespoon of fat to your mixture. Coconut oil provides medium-chain triglycerides that enhance curcumin transport across intestinal walls. Extra virgin olive oil delivers additional anti-inflammatory polyphenols that work synergistically with curcumin. Melted ghee works beautifully and adds a pleasant flavor. Some people use full-fat yogurt, which provides both fat and beneficial probiotics that support gut health, important because gut inflammation often drives systemic inflammation. Mix everything together thoroughly. The result won't win any beauty contests. It looks like orange-yellow pudding with black specks and a slightly grainy texture from the chia gel. But what you're holding is a precisely calibrated anti-inflammatory formula that addresses multiple inflammatory pathways simultaneously. Take this mixture in the morning with breakfast. Why morning? Several reasons supported by research. First, inflammatory markers follow circadian rhythms. C-reactive protein and interleukin-6 levels typically peak in early morning hours, which is why many people with inflammatory conditions experience their worst symptoms upon waking. That morning stiffness, the aching joints when you first get out of bed, that's partly driven by overnight inflammatory cytokine accumulation. Taking your anti-inflammatory combination in the morning intercepts this inflammatory surge. Second, curcumin has a relatively short half-life in your bloodstream, about 6 to 8 hours before your body metabolizes and eliminates it. Taking it in the morning means you've got peak curcumin levels during your active daytime hours when you're moving, working, and putting stress on joints and tissues. The anti-inflammatory coverage is there when you need it most. Third, the omega-3 seconds from chia seeds benefit from being consumed with other foods. When you eat this mixture alongside your regular breakfast, eggs, oatmeal, whatever, the presence of other fats and proteins slows digestion and allows for more gradual, sustained absorption of nutrients. You're creating a time-release anti-inflammatory effect rather than a sharp spike and crash. What should you expect week by week? Let me walk you through the typical progression based on data from clinical trials and hundreds of anecdotal reports. Days 1 through 3, most people notice nothing dramatic. Maybe slight digestive changes as your gut adjusts to increased fiber from chia seeds. Some people report feeling slightly warmer after consumption, that's curcumin, improving circulation and metabolic rate. By days 4 through 7, the first subtle improvements appear. You might reach for pain medication one fewer time during the week. Morning stiffness might ease 5 or 10 minutes faster. Sleep quality often improves slightly because inflammatory cytokines that disrupt sleep architecture are beginning to decrease. These changes are small enough that you might dismiss them as coincidence or placebo effect, but they're measurable in lab studies. Week 2 brings more obvious effects. This is when most people report thinking, wait, something's actually different. That chronic low back pain that's always there becomes intermittent. The knee that clicks and aches going upstairs does it less frequently. Inflammatory conditions affecting skin eczema, psoriasis often show visible improvement during week 2 as inflammatory cytokines in skin tissue decrease. Weeks 3 and 4, the improvements accelerate. This aligns with research showing it takes about 21 to 28 days for omega-3 seconds to fully incorporate into cellular membranes and begin exerting their anti-inflammatory effects at the cellular level. Combined with the ongoing enzyme inhibition from daily curcumin intake, you've established what researchers call sustained anti-inflammatory activity. People report being able to do activities they'd avoided for months or years: gardening without knee pain, playing tennis without shoulder inflammation, walking a mile without hip discomfort. Let me tell you about Lisa, a 62-year-old from Oregon with severe osteoarthritis in both hands. She'd been told by her rheumatologist that joint replacement surgery was in her future if inflammation continued progressing. Her morning hand stiffness lasted 3 hours. She couldn't open jars, struggled with doorknobs, and had given up hobbies like knitting and painting that required fine motor control. Her daughter convinced her to try the chia turmeric pepper combination, mixing it into her morning oatmeal. Lisa's transformation followed that typical timeline. Week 1. Nothing noticeable. Week 2. She realized she'd opened a jar without asking her husband for help, the first time in 18 months. Week 3. Her morning stiffness was lasting about 90 minutes instead of 3 hours. By week 6, she was back to painting, and her rheumatologist was shocked by the improvement in her inflammatory markers. Her C-reactive protein had dropped from 8.2 to 3.1 milligrams per liter. Her sedimentation rate, another inflammation indicator, had decreased by 45%. Most remarkably, her joint damage hadn't progressed. The X-rays showed no additional deterioration, suggesting the combination wasn't just masking symptoms, but actually slowing inflammatory joint damage. The scientific evidence supporting this approach keeps accumulating. A 2022 study published in PMC examined the mechanisms by which omega-3 fatty acids and curcumin work synergistically. Researchers discovered that curcumin enhances the conversion of ALA to EPA. Remember that bottleneck I mentioned earlier where only 5 to 10% of ALA converts? Curcumin appears to upregulate the enzymes responsible for this conversion, potentially doubling the efficiency. Meanwhile, omega-3 seconds enhance curcumin's anti-inflammatory effects by altering cellular membrane composition, making cells more responsive to curcumin's enzymatic inhibition. This synergy explains why the combination produces better results than either component alone. It's not just additive, it's multiplicative. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Researchers call this synergistic potentiation, and it's exactly what you want when addressing complex inflammatory conditions. Another compelling study from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health in 2020 examined this combination specifically in people with metabolic syndrome, a cluster of conditions including abdominal obesity, high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, and abnormal cholesterol levels. Metabolic syndrome involves significant systemic inflammation that drives cardiovascular disease and diabetes. After 16 weeks on the Chia turmeric pepper protocol, participants showed remarkable improvements. C-reactive protein decreased an average of 38%. Fasting blood glucose dropped by 14%. LDL cholesterol oxidation, a key step in atherosclerotic plaque formation, decreased by 42%. Waist circumference decreased by an average of 2.3 inches, suggesting reduced visceral fat inflammation. The researchers measured something else fascinating: changes in inflammatory gene expression. Using advanced genetic testing, they examined which genes were turned on or off in participants' white blood cells. After 16 weeks, inflammatory genes like TNF-alpha, IL-6, and IL-1 beta showed significantly reduced expression. Anti-inflammatory genes involved in inflammation resolution, specialized pro-resolving mediators, showed increased expression. The combination wasn't just blocking inflammation, it was helping reprogram cellular inflammatory responses toward better balance. A 2019 study published in Food and Function examined the combination in healthy adults without diagnosed inflammatory conditions, but with elevated subclinical inflammation, C-reactive protein between 1 and 3 milligrams per liter. This matters because low-grade chronic inflammation at these levels predicts future cardiovascular disease, dementia, and metabolic disorders, even in people who feel fine now. After 12 weeks, the treatment group showed a 29% reduction in CRP compared to just 4% in the control group eating their normal diet. The researchers concluded that the combination could potentially reduce cardiovascular disease risk by 20–30% if maintained long-term based on the CRP reductions achieved. But the benefits extend beyond measurable inflammatory markers. Multiple studies have documented improvements in what researchers call patient-reported outcomes, the subjective but critically important measures of how people actually feel. Pain scores decrease. Fatigue improves. Sleep quality increases. Mood stabilizes. Physical function tests how long someone can stand, walk, grip strength, show measurable improvements. Quality of life assessments consistently show significant gains when people maintain this protocol for 3 months or longer. Now, you might be thinking this sounds too good to be true. If a simple combination of seeds and spices works this well, surely there must be catches or downsides. Let's address safety concerns directly, because this is important information everyone should have before starting any new intervention, even natural ones. The blood thinning issue deserves your attention if you're on anticoagulant medications. Both omega-3 fatty acids and curcumin have mild anticoagulant effects. They reduce blood platelet aggregation, the clumping that helps blood clot. If you're taking warfarin, Plavix, aspirin therapy, or any other blood thinner, this combination could enhance those effects and potentially increase bleeding risk. This doesn't mean you absolutely can't use this combination, but you need to inform your doctor and potentially monitor your INR or bleeding time more frequently. Some physicians will adjust your medication dose slightly to account for the food-based anticoagulant effects. If you're scheduled for surgery, stop taking this combination at least 1 week beforehand. You want your normal clotting function fully restored before any surgical procedure. Similarly, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, be cautious. Turmeric in food amounts is generally recognized as safe, but concentrated therapeutic doses haven't been studied extensively during pregnancy. Most obstetricians suggest avoiding concentrated curcumin supplementation during pregnancy, though culinary use of turmeric in food is fine. People with gallbladder issues should pay attention here. Curcumin stimulates bile production, which is actually beneficial for most people. Bile helps digest fats and eliminate toxins. But if you have gallstones or bile duct obstruction, increased bile production could trigger gallbladder attacks. If you've had your gallbladder removed, this isn't usually a problem, though some people without gallbladders experience digestive upset from turmeric and need to start with smaller doses. The fiber content from chia seeds means you need to stay well hydrated. 2 tablespoons of chia seeds provide about 10 grams of fiber, roughly a third of daily fiber needs for most adults. If you're not used to high fiber intake, jumping straight to this amount could cause bloating, gas, or digestive discomfort. Some people benefit from starting with 1 tablespoon of chia seeds for the first week, then increasing to 2 tablespoons once their digestive system adapts. And drink plenty of water, at least 8 ounces with your chia mixture, plus adequate water throughout the day. Some people experience mild stomach upset from turmeric, especially on an empty stomach. This is why taking the combination with breakfast rather than first thing upon waking usually works better. The presence of other food buffers the turmeric and reduces the chance of digestive irritation. If you do experience stomach discomfort, try reducing the turmeric to half a teaspoon for a few days, then gradually increase back to a full teaspoon as your system adjusts. Who should absolutely avoid this combination? People with bile duct obstruction, people taking chemotherapy drugs, metabolized by the same liver enzymes as curcumin, your oncologist can tell you if this applies, and people with bleeding disorders like hemophilia, where even mild anticoagulant effects could be dangerous. For everyone else, including people with diabetes, autoimmune conditions, cardiovascular disease, or metabolic syndrome, this combination is generally safe and often beneficial, though you should inform your healthcare provider you're using it. One question that comes up frequently, can you take this if you're already on prescription anti-inflammatory medications? Usually yes, though you should discuss it with your prescriber. Many people successfully combine this food-based approach with medications, often finding they can reduce medication doses over time under medical supervision as their inflammation improves. Some physicians are enthusiastic about this. They see it as supporting their pharmaceutical interventions with complementary dietary approaches. Others are skeptical, but generally won't object as long as you're monitoring inflammatory markers and reporting any side effects. The transformation begins with understanding that chronic inflammation isn't a life sentence. Your body has extraordinary healing and rebalancing capacity when you provide the right building blocks and enzyme inhibitors. This research-backed protocol: 2 tablespoons of soaked chia seeds, 1 teaspoon of turmeric, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of healthy fat, consumed together each morning, gives your body precisely what it needs to downregulate inflammatory pathways that drive pain, stiffness, and tissue damage. The evidence spans over 40 peer-reviewed studies published between 2015 and 2024, involving more than 3,000 total participants with various inflammatory conditions. The consistency of results across different populations, different countries, different research institutions is remarkable. When you prepare this mixture tonight and consume it tomorrow morning, you're not experimenting with some untested folk remedy. You're applying validated nutritional science that physicians and researchers have documented extensively. Here's my challenge to you. Prepare 1 week's worth tonight. Get your chia seeds, quality turmeric, black pepper grinder, and healthy fat source. Tomorrow morning, mix your first serving and consume it with breakfast. Pay attention to your body over the next 7 days. Notice your pain levels, your stiffness, your energy, your sleep quality. Don't expect miracles in week 1. This isn't a pharmaceutical with instant effects. But notice the subtle shifts, the small improvements that suggest something is changing at the cellular level. After 1 week, decide whether to continue for the full 8 weeks that research shows produces optimal results. Track one specific inflammatory symptom, maybe morning stiffness duration, or how many times you reach for pain medication weekly, or how long you can walk before discomfort stops you. Measure that symptom now, then measure it again at week 4 and week 8. Let your own body's response guide you, supported by the extensive research showing most people experience significant improvements within that time frame. This can become foundational in your approach to health. Not a replacement for necessary medical care, but a powerful complement that addresses inflammation through multiple pathways using compounds humans have consumed safely for thousands of years. Your body knows how to use these nutrients, the omega-3 seconds, the curcumin, the piperine. You're simply providing them in the right combinations and ratios that maximize their anti-inflammatory potential. The science is clear, the mechanisms are understood, the safety profile is excellent for most people, the cost is minimal. The potential benefits: reduced pain, improved function, lower inflammatory markers, decreased disease progression, are substantial and well documented. Take that first step tonight. Your body has been fighting inflammation with one hand tied behind its back. It's time to give it the tools it needs to win that fight.